All right, ready to dive deep. Today we're tackling Reliance Industries Limited.
That company that seems to be everywhere, right?
Exactly. By the end of this, you'll be a Reliance expert.
Ready to impress even the most seasoned business folks.
We've got company summaries, financials, shareholder details, even some recent announcements.
A whole mountain of information to dig into.
Our mission: cut through the noise and give you the real story behind Reliance.
What makes them tick, why they matter globally, and maybe even uncover some hidden surprises.
Okay, so Reliance Industries Ltd, founded by Dhirubhai Ambani, now led by his son Mukesh.
The Ambani family still holds around 50% of the company.
Talk about a dynasty, but what exactly SBS their empire built on?
Well, what's fascinating about Reliance is their sheer diversity. They're a true conglomerate.
Right, the intro mentioned that.
But their biggest chunk, at least for now, is oil to chemicals, about 57% of their revenue.
Okay, so they're big into oil and chemicals, but what does that actually mean? They refine crude oil, right? But this source mentions they have the largest single-site refinery complex globally. That's got to be massive.
It is massive. Think 1.4 million barrels of crude oil processed every single day.
Whoa.
To put that in perspective, that's enough to fill almost 600 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Every day.
Every single day. And here's the kicker. 89% of that refined oil is meant for sale. They're not just keeping it for themselves.
So they're producing and shipping out a huge amount of product. That's impressive. But they're not just an oil and gas company, are they?
Nope, not at all.
I see mentions of telecommunications, retail, even renewable energy.
You're right. Reliance isn't content with just oil and chemicals.
Seems like they have their fingers in a lot of pies.
They're making some serious moves into the digital world, especially with their Geo platform.
Yeah.
They're aiming to become a major player, maybe even the biggest, in India's digital landscape.
And possibly even globally.
Potentially, yes.
That's incredibly ambitious. So how is all of this playing out financially? I'm seeing their market cap is over 17 trillion.
That's a huge number.
And they've also been working on reducing their debt, which is always a good sign.
It is a good sign. Financially, they're in a pretty strong position.
But I do see something here, a con listed, low return on equity.
Ah, yes. The ROE. It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Not necessarily a deal breaker, though.
Not necessarily, but it's worth watching.
Okay, so their financials look good overall, but that low ROE is something to keep in mind. Speaking of things to keep in mind, let's look at those recent announcements.
Right.
It seems someone lost a huge number of share certificates.
Oh.
4,674 to be exact. Hopefully they had backups.
Yeah, let's hope so.
There's also a UBS summit coming up. Maybe we'll hear some more Reliance news from that.
It's definitely worth keeping an eye on that summit.
But here's something interesting I noticed. Reliance isn't just a company, it's kind of a reflection of the Indian economy as a whole.
That's a great point. Their performance, their moves into new sectors, it all creates ripples, not just within India, but globally too.
So for you, dear listener, understanding Reliance is like having a cheat sheet to understanding major global trends. Energy, technology, retail, you name it.
It's like a window into how the world is changing.
Now let's zoom in a bit and unpack their financials in more detail. The data from screener.in gives us a glimpse into their performance over the past few years.
Okay.
Remember that operating profit margin we mentioned? Well, it's been on a bit of a roller coaster.
It has.
Back in 2013, it was around 8%, then jumped to 15% by 2016.
Interesting.
Lately, it seems to have stabilized between 16% and 18%.
So they found a good rhythm.
It seems like it. Their profit before tax did dip in 2020, but it rebounded quickly.
I see that here.
And their earnings per share, or EPS, has been steadily climbing, which is a good sign for investors.
It is.
But remember, these are just snapshots. To get a real grip on their financial health, we need to dig deeper into their balance sheets, cash flow statements, all that good stuff.
Right, we need to look at the whole picture.
And lucky for you, dear listener, we've got all that waiting for you in the source material we've provided. Annual reports, credit ratings, even transcripts from their investor calls.
A whole Reliance buffet.
So whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, there's something here for everyone.
And with a company as complex as Reliance, you're bound to uncover some intriguing details.
Like what?
Give us a teaser.
Well, for example, back in 2015, their inventory days, that's the time it takes them to sell their inventory, jumped to 90 days.
90 days.
Compared to their average of around 60 days in prior years, that's a significant jump.
That IS, a big jump, makes you wonder what was happening behind the scenes.
Right. Were they launching a new product? Did their supply chain hit a snag? It's like a little detective work.
I love that. It's not just about memorizing facts and figures, it's about sparking your curiosity.
Exactly.
Okay.
Asking why.
Oh,
Digging deeper. That's what makes a deep dive so much fun.
and that's what we're going to keep doing as we explore the world of Reliance Industries. There's a lot more to uncover. Welcome back to our Reliance Industries deep dive.
We've already uncovered some fascinating stuff about their oil and gas operations, those digital ambitions, and of course, those missing share certificates.
Yeah, still makes you wonder about that one.
It does. But today I wanted to start by looking at Reliance's shareholder structure.
All right.
The Ambani family still controls about 50% of the company, right?
That's right. And if you track their shareholding over time, it's been remarkably stable.
Even as the company has grown and expanded into new areas?
Exactly. Speaks volumes about their long-term vision, I'd say.
It does. But what about the other shareholders? Who else owns a piece of Reliance?
Well, as you might expect with a company of this size, there's a mix of institutional investors, mutual funds, foreign investors.
Usual suspects.
Right. But what's really interesting is the increasing number of individual investors, especially in recent years.
I see that here in the data, the number of shareholders has been steadily climbing.
It seems like everyone wants a piece of the Reliance pie.
And it's not hard to see why. They're constantly pushing boundaries, venturing into new sectors. They're a major player in the Indian economy.
Absolutely. Speaking of new sectors, let's talk about their move into renewable energy.
Yeah, that's a big one. Seems like a pretty recent development, but they're going all in.
They are. And it's a smart move, perfectly aligned with global trends.
The world is definitely shifting toward more sustainable practices.
Exactly. Reliance is positioning itself to be a leader in the green energy revolution.
And what I find so fascinating is how they're using their existing expertise in oil and gas to transition to renewables.
Right. It's like they're turning the traditional energy model upside down.
They're not just building solar and wind farms, they're investing in the entire ecosystem.
Battery storage, green hydrogen production, the whole works.
Now that's forward thinking.
It is.
Yeah.
And it could have huge implications for the future of energy in India and beyond.
Absolutely. Okay, but let's not forget about their digital ambitions. We talked about the Geo platform earlier, but I'm curious to hear more about what that really means.
Okay, yeah.
What are they trying to achieve beyond just becoming a big player in the digital space?
Well, think of it this way. Reliance is aiming to build a complete digital ecosystem.
A walled garden of sorts.
Right. They want to encompass everything from e-commerce and entertainment to healthcare and financial services, essentially become the one-stop shop for millions of Indians.
So they're building their own digital universe?
In a way, yes. And that has huge implications, not just for Reliance, but for the entire Indian population.
Right, because with Geo's low-cost data plans, they've already brought millions online.
Exactly. And now they're building the platforms and services to cater to those new users.
It's a bold vision, no doubt.
It has the potential to completely transform India into a digital society.
But of course, with any ambitious venture come challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
What are some of the hurdles Reliance might face in this digital push?
Well, one big one is competition. The digital space is already pretty crowded.
Lots of established players, both domestic and international.
Right. Reliance will need to find ways to stand out, offer something unique.
Definitely. What else?
Regulation. The Indian government is paying more and more attention to the digital economy.
Makes sense.
Reliance will need to navigate those regulations very carefully.
That's a good point. But they do have a track record of overcoming challenges.
That's true. They've consistently shown they can adapt and innovate.
They're not afraid to take risks.
Exactly. And their history suggests those risks often pay off.
So it seems like another takeaway here is that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the biggest rewards.
I think that's a great takeaway. Innovation often requires stepping outside your comfort zone.
And as Reliance continues to evolve, it'll be fascinating to see what new innovations they come up with.
Speaking of innovation, I'm reminded of that upcoming UBS summit.
Oh, right. Maybe we'll get some hints about their future plans there.
It's definitely possible. They've been known to make some pretty big announcements at those events.
So for our listeners, if you're looking for clues about what Reliance is up to, that UBS summit might be worth watching.
Keep in mind, this is a company that's constantly moving, constantly changing.
Never a dull moment with Reliance, that's for sure.
Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier. Those missing share certificates.
Ah, yes. Seem like a small detail, but it actually speaks to a bigger issue.
Right. Corporate governance.
Exactly. Even with all their technology and innovation, Reliance still needs to make sure they have strong governance in place.
Things like transparency, accountability, robust internal controls.
especially for a company of this size and complexity.
Absolutely. Losing those certificates might have been a minor slip-up, but it does raise some questions.
About their systems, their safeguards.
It's a good reminder for all of us, no matter what we do, to make sure we have solid systems in place.
Wise words. But let's not dwell on lost certificates for too long. We've got more ground to cover.
Right. In our final segment, we'll zoom out and examine Reliance's impact on the Indian economy and the world.
Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for the final part of our Reliance Industries journey.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground already. Their operations, their ambitions, even those missing share certificates.
Still can't believe those went missing.
Right. But now I think it's time to step back and look at the bigger picture.
Okay, yeah. Remember how we talked about Reliance being a bellwether for the Indian economy?
A kind of indicator of how the whole economy is doing.
Exactly. But what does that actually mean? And what does it tell us about India's future?
Well, a bellwether is basically a company whose performance is seen as a signal for a whole industry or even an entire economy.
So if Reliance is doing well, it's good news for India.
Generally, yes. But it's not quite that simple.
Okay, I was going to say.
What's fascinating is that Reliance's growth often mirrors India's growth.
They're influenced by the economy.
Right. But to T, they're also actively driving that growth in many ways.
Ah, so it's a two-way street.
Exactly. Think about their telecom venture, Gio. By offering those super affordable data plans,
Right.
they brought millions of Indians online.
Huge impact.
Huge. And that's had ripple effects on everything from education to new businesses starting up.
People who were once completely offline are now connected, participating in the global economy.
It's like they unleashed a digital tidal wave across India.
And with their push into e-commerce and other digital services, they're creating a whole new marketplace.
A digital economy within India.
So even if you're not invested in Reliance directly, their performance can still affect you.
Oh, absolutely. Their energy choices, for instance, impact global markets. Their retail dominance shapes what consumers want.
It's all interconnected.
Exactly. And that's what makes these deep dives so valuable.
It's not just about learning about one company.
It's about understanding the forces that shape our world, the things that affect us all.
Developing that systems thinking you were talking about.
Right. Seeing the connections between things that might seem completely separate.
Now, we've talked about their size, their influence, their ambition, but what about their responsibility? Companies today are being held accountable for their impact on the environment, on society, and
Oh, absolutely. That's a crucial question.
so how does Reliance measure up in that regard?
That's a question that probably deserves a whole deep dive of its own.
Fair enough.
But from what we've seen, they are taking steps in the right direction, especially with their investments in renewable energy.
Moving towards sustainability.
Exactly. Making commitments to social initiatives and ethical governance.
But of course, actions speak louder than words.
Always.
It's something we'll all be watching closely as Reliance continues to grow.
And that brings us to our final takeaway for today.
All right.
Understanding Reliance isn't just about numbers and financials.
It's bigger than that.
It's about understanding the connections between business, technology, society, the environment.
Seeing the whole picture.
Recognizing that the choices of even a single company, even a giant like Reliance.
Can have a ripple effect on the whole world.
Exactly. So for you, dear listener, what does this all mean? It means knowledge is power.
Knowing about Reliance, their strategies, their impact.
It helps you make better decisions as an investor, a consumer, even just as a global citizen.
We've only scratched the surface here today, but hopefully this deep dive has made you curious about Reliance.
And given you a glimpse into those bigger forces shaping our world.
Remember, the journey doesn't end here. There's always more to learn, more to explore.
Keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, keep diving deep.
That's how we make sense of this complex world we live in. And on that note, happy exploring.